blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right, welcome CoCo Cruiser. You're listening to episode 88 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Very exciting stuff. We've recently passed our 300,000 downloads mark. Pretty proud of that.
Wow.
I think that's a good sign of longevity.
Great success.
That's awesome.
Big success, yes.
Thousands served.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, like I say, we've been serving the community. I think we've done a good job. The CoCo Fest is coming up, roughly 7 months away from now. Hopefully that'll be a good show. There's going to be a new venue, new hotel, so Boise and I and our soft practices can be comfortable at the new place, hopefully. By the time this is released, the Tandy Assembly will probably be either underway or over. So we're going to say the next Tandy Assembly is roughly 12 months away, coming up in 2023. Very exciting. Anybody working on a project or got anything in the works or something cool to report?
I'm just in full Tandy Assembly prep mode right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the
Summer
same
slides
here.
Tandy Assembly. So yeah, I know Neil's picking up T-shirts today.
They look good.
Yeah, they turned out well.
Well, very exciting. Let's see. So what about eBay? Any new eBay finds or any other acquisitions? Fell off the wagon, or been back on the wagon, I guess, with the eBay stuff. Haven't bought anything in a while. Anyone else?
Slim pickings on eBay anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the case. You'd think there'd be plenty of stuff with the current economic woes, but yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I'm not sure how inflation factors in there.
prices of cocos are all over the place, I think. I'm surprised.
Always hard to tell. That's probably enough to get us started, so we call that an introduction, take a little break, and then we'll come back and hit some announcements.
Hometown Radio Shack.
Hi, I'm really enjoying playing games at the arcade. I was wondering if you had any arcade-style game controllers for the color computer.
Well, we do sell joysticks for the CoCo.
Can you describe them?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have a plastic joystick, and there's a small push button on the side.
Do they have spring return?
Well, we also sell the deluxe joystick. It has spring return.
What's it like?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have a plastic joystick, and there's a little push button on the side and one on the top. But we do sell some other brands, too.
What are they like?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have plastic joystick, and there's a little push buttons on the sides.
Why play games with fragile, outdated plastic controllers? Move up to professional arcade quality with the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate two-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon or Tandy 1000. It features a genuine arcade quality joystick with two large arcade quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. It sits comfortably on your lap or on your desk. Select custom furniture quality paint or stain finishes. Choose a right or left-handed configuration. And now you have the option of light-up LED buttons. Find out why so many others are delighted with the Gamester. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil@CoCoCrew.org. That's NEIL@CoCoCrew.org. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for some announcements. You are listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter with the Twitter handle of @CoCo Crew Podcast. That's @CoCoCrew_PODCAST. If you'd like to send tweets, feel free to tweet at us, and we may tweet back to you. See, we are, of course, available on Facebook with a Facebook group called the CoCo Crew Podcast. Join up and You may get a little early news or occasional interactions with the hosts or other listeners. Usually a lot of fun. We would love to have you join. See, we are a podcast, so we are available. We, of course, have an RSS feed available at CoCoCrew.org. If that's a little too DIY for you, then you can check us out through Apple Podcasts or through Google Play. Or if you're more of a streaming kind of person, then you can find us available for streaming on Spotify, on Stitcher, and on TuneIn. Well, basically the whole catalog now is available with a conversion that's been done from the audio podcast to a video form that's available on YouTube. And so you may want to check that out. The best part about consuming the podcast through YouTube is that YouTube does a pretty good job providing subtitles. So if you are hearing impaired, or perhaps if English is not your first language, you may enjoy having those subtitles as sort of a backup for if you have trouble understanding or figuring out what we're saying. Anyway, so check it out. Let's see, we are a member of the Throwback Network. This is a list of retro-themed podcasts organized around the 80s culture. If you are caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast and looking for something else to listen to, we recommend that you check out the Throwback Network. Similarly, we are available on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. This is a list of retro-themed podcasts. In this case, all of them are about 80s era gaming technology or gaming systems or home computers. If you are caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast, we recommend that you check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have a need to host audio on the internet, whether it be for your own podcast or perhaps your place of worship, then we recommend that you check out the Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. If you want to reach out to the host of the CoCo Crew Podcast, we have via email. We have a few addresses set up that you might want to use. Show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org, SHOW at CoCoCrew.org, podcast at CoCoCrew.org, that's PODCAST at CoCoCrew.org, and of course feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org. If you want to reach just the individual hosts, then we have those email addresses available as well. Of course, I'm available as John, JOHN, at CoCoCrew.org. Neil is Neil, NEIL, at CoCoCrew.org. Mike is Mike, MIKE, at CoCoCrew.org. And Boise is Boise, BOISY, at CoCoCrew.org. That's the end of our standard announcements. And at this point, we typically cover a few events in real life that we think might be of interest to our listeners. Top of the list is Tandy Assembly, September 30th through October 2nd of 2022. That'll be in Springfield, Ohio. That'll be their big Tandy event for the year. The CoCo Crew hosts are involved in the planning there. I think we're all actually going to make it this time. So, should be a great event. So if you are anywhere near Springfield, Ohio, we recommend you come out and check it out and see the Tandy World and assemble. Next on the list, coming up October 14th through the 16th, 2022, we have the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. Retro Gaming Expo, Inc. is a Portland, Oregon-based 501c4 nonprofit cooperative organization dedicated to creating awareness of and appreciation for classic video and arcade games through the presentation of events and conventions that celebrate the historic contribution video games have made and continue to make in popular culture. If you are in the Pacific Northwest and looking for something to do, check out the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, October 14th through 16th, 2022. Next on the list, October 22nd, Dragon Meetup, being held at Blanco's Hotel in Port Talbot, which of course is in Wales. It's a great opportunity for us to get together, see each other's wares, and discuss all things Dragon. And yes, there will be a pilgrimage to the Dragon Data Kinfig factory on Saturday for photo opportunities. Should be a cool event if you're in Wales or the UK or near to Wales. We recommend you find your way to Port Talbot. Just check out and meet up with your Dragon brethren and have a good time. Last event currently on the list, April 22nd and 23rd of 2023, the 31st annual Last Chicago CoCo Fest at the Holiday Inn and Suites, Chicago Carol Stream in Carol Stream, Illinois. This is the continuation of the event that's been sponsored by Glenside for years. The Glenside Color Computer Club is offering a catered dinner during CoCo Fest on Saturday, April 22nd. Traditionally the big CoCo event. I'll see you there. That's all I've got on my list. So I'm going to call this section to a close. We'll be back with some news. With us. Now it's time for some news. The first link comes from Scarlett Liziak at KOB4 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The title of the piece is Retro Computer Meetup Draws Enthusiasts in Albuquerque. There are dozens of old computers at the QLab Makerspace, both Apple and PCs, and these machines really picture of how much technology has advanced. But these also brought together a crowd of people who are passionate in edge technology. Anyway, it's a local TV report of a retro meetup at a local makerspace there in Albuquerque. And it's probably not big news, but it's kind of cool to see that there's some coverage. And so if you're having meetings like this, maybe you should consider getting your local news to send people out and do a little coverage and drum up support for your club and, maybe even get a little bit bigger attendance for future events. Very cool. So the next link from Ingmar's retro blog. I don't know who Ingmar is, but apparently he's into Vectrix. Not a CoCo link here, but the Vectrix cartridge port is what works pretty much the same as the CoCo cartridge port. So entitled Self-Made ROM Module for Vectrix, describing the process of how he designed a little circuit board and built a circuit for an EEPROM and how it kind of fits into the address space and so on. Pretty general stuff, but thought it might be worth a good read for anyone in the hobby who's curious about how to create cartridges and how to interface a ROM to a machine. It's going to be pretty similar with the Vectrix as it is with the CoCo, so might be worth a read. Take a look. This one is from Joel Reese, SourceForge project. And the first one called ASEM68C assembles M6800 and 6801 assembly language source code. And fourth, handles the complete published set of opcodes, mnemonics, mostly source language compatible with the common assemblers to use circa 1985, but no macros. Now use standard LDAA syntax by default. That's one of the kind of weird stumbling blocks I've seen or experienced when I was learning 6800 assembly after doing 6809 assembly. Both of them have both A and B accumulators, and they have load instructions for each of them. But whereas on the 6809, it's LDA for loading A and LDB for loading B. On the 6800, it's LDA as in load accumulator. There's LDAA and LDAB, so load accumulator A, load accumulator B. It probably makes more sense in some ways, but it just seems like a wasted extra character. So anyway, it sounds like he was defaulting to using the LDA previously, and now it's LDAA. Anyway, says it outputs S1, S records, optional binary or MC10 compatible C10 output, includes the Fig4th model for 6800 as a test file. So if you're looking for a fourth for the 6800, it might be a quick way to pick it up and assemble it. Thanks, Joel. Glad to see the contribution there. The last item of this little section comes from Jim Gary. Jim was apparently moved by the recent passing, of course, of England's Queen Elizabeth II. And so he's got a MC10 semi-graphic screen with a kind of a likeness of Queen Elizabeth II. His tribute to QE2 there. So pretty cool. Nice to combine your interests and make a little marker for a current event on your hobby computer. Very nice, Jim. Thank you.
Our next one up is from Dan Jovic at Hackaday, and this is pretty cool. MC10 AV mod board. This is a composite video modification for the MC10. If you have an MC10, you understand its only video option is television, so an RF output. This looks like you have to roll it yourself. I don't think they have boards for sale, but you've got the information to make your own board. Looks like a nice, well-designed board, single-sided. You could probably etch your own from the photos if you needed to. That's definitely a plus for the MC10 world to have a composite video. Definitely check that out. All right, our next one is from Joel Reese. It's Tandy Radio Shack MC10 Assembly Language Part 1, getting VTL2, very tiny language, running. This is a nice article that Joel's put together, talking about getting VTL2. You've got some familiarity with VTL, don't you, John?
Yeah, so covered this a little bit a couple months back. So I'd kind of picked up, someone was calling for some assistance in trying to get some VTL2 sources assembling. And so I took it up and was working with it a little bit and kind of not totally stalemated, but kind of hit a sticking point somewhere. I think my flapping of arms attracted Joel's attention, and he sort of adopted the project, and he's been carrying it forward. Looks like he's had some success, so good to see that.
Yeah, very cool. All right, we've got another one from Mike Rojas. So we fixed that. We have figured out how to print the spacer as one piece, added a couple of enhancements. So Mike has been developing this, it's a keyboard Mylar replacement for your CoCo keyboard. Has made some improvements to it. So it's all one piece now, so there's no alignment issues. Added a hole for the spring to pass through, and it's made a huge difference in the key performance. It also gives a shout out to our own Boise Pete. So got anything to add to that, Boise?
Yeah, I received the replacement keyboard from Mike. I have yet to try it, but he's right. He did put it in one piece for the spacer, and he claims that the feel is better. And I've actually typed on it without putting in a CoCo yet, and it does feel springier or peppier, I would say. And good project. In fact, I think Mike will be at Tandy Assembly this coming weekend.
Oh, excellent. I look forward to meeting Mike. Awesome. So, yeah, if you've got a keyboard that's misbehaving on your CoCo, this is definitely a possibility, a solution for you. It looks like it's a good one.
Yep, definitely.
Well done. Thanks for that contribution, Mike. And our next one is from Chet Simpson. Little video called The 7-Minute Snake, showing how I created the enemy paths in Kumiko so awesomely. A good YouTube video. Give it a watch. Chet walks through his development flow and his tools to show you how he makes those awesome graphics that he makes on the CoCo. Definitely cool.
Always nice to see more Professor Chet.
Absolutely.
From Neek Hilkman and Thomas Walskar. Hope I'm pronouncing your names right. The title is We Spoke with the Last Person Standing in the Floppy Disk Business. This is a really cool article, I guess kind of interview style, with the guy behind floppydisk.com website, which has been around for quite a while now. I've never used it personally, but I know people who have and have had really good luck with it. And it's just nice to see that this, after all these years, this site is still going. It's a really interesting read. He used to do a CD duplication, and now 90% of his business is selling blank floppy disks. Who would ever guess?
Wow.
Talk about
that's
pivoting.
Awesome.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I've long left floppy disks, but they still show up from time to time, I guess, and for a need for one, I should say. Well, actually, I still have floppy drive systems in my collection, so what's a floppy drive system if you don't have a floppy disk?
I imagine today, if you actually need a floppy, you're probably ready to pay quite a bit for it. So, if you take advantage of that pricing, and maybe that's how you can have a business.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because I've got a case of 5 1/4 discs still that have not been opened.
Rack them up.
Keep them sealed. All right, next news article is from Carl England, who we actually had on our show a while back. This was titled, Many, Many Years Ago. I was constantly discovering interesting things to do, or that can be done, with the CoCo. Talking about hybrid floppy disks. So basically what that is, it's a floppy disk that has, the first part of it is RS-DOS, and then OS9 on the last section. So tracks 0 to 16, and then 17 to 34. I have never tried this myself. How about yourself, Boise? Have you ever gotten into this?
I have experimented with hybrid disks. It looks like what he's doing is setting up a certain number of tracks for RS-DOS and a certain number for OS9, and it works out great because RS-DOS's disk directory starts on track 17, and you can make the FAT look like tracks 0 to 16 are full, so it never tries to write to it. And on OS9, you could use tracks 0 through 16 because OS9 wants LS and 0 for itself. So it works out real well.
That's cool.
I'm trying to think if there's actually software distributed that way. Actually, I think you could argue that early OS9 operating system disks for the CoCo were hybrid, because if you recall, you could even take the OS9 Level 2 system disk, stick it in a floppy disk on a CoCo, type dir, and see star.bas.
Ah, right.
Now, that was a different type of hybrid disk because that wasn't allocating the entire half of the disk to Disk Basic. It was just allocating enough of it to allow Disk Basic to have that star.bas program run on it or reside on it. Then you would run it, and then OS9, of course, would kick in booting from the rest of the floppy disk.
Right. So that's early days of hybrid disks. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and of course, it would be interesting to have a game or something that was an OS9/RS-DOS hybrid that you could do that with. But yeah, there's some utility behind that.
Right. That's very cool.
Oh, howdy, partner. Time for timer. Do you ever have that coding feeling after school? Boy, I do. I'm just itching to write a good program. When I'm trying to write a program I like, I hanker for a CoCo 3. Here's a neat little trick. looks really slick with ports from Radio Shack. Here's a neat hardware hack. Come on. Here's an easy way to add a power-on indicator. Just attach an LED in series with a 470 ohm resistor between 5 volts and ground. Look, power's on. When I have data to place into mentioned arrays, I hanker for a CoCo 3. When the screen needs to be set to a new, brighter color set, or anytime I want to program in C, I hanker for a CoCo. An Apple II's a no-no. The CoCo is a winner before or after dinner. I hanker for a CoCo 3. Yahoo!
This is the CoCo Crew Podcast Network.
This is it, gang. The greatest Radio Shack value ever offered. The new TRS-80 color computer featuring 4K to 16K of memory, 53-key keyboard, 16 lines of 32 uppercase characters, connectors for two two-dimensional joysticks with push-button switch on each, RS-232 serial I/O port, 1500 baud cassette port. To get yours, buy a box of Gimme Crisp cereal, then, with your name and address, send $400 in coin and a Gimme Crisp box top to Color Computer, Box 812, St. Louis, Missouri. If you don't agree that the TRS-80 color computer is tops, return it. We'll return your money. That's Color Computer, Box 812, St. Louis, Missouri.
Next news article is from Harry Fairhead. It's titled, Richard Stallman Announces C Reference. This looks like a book that he's working on here. I don't know much about this. It might be more up your alley, John.
Well, yeah. I mean, Stallman, of course, has become controversial. He's one of the people mentioned in the book Hackers. Little Richie Stallman, I think, is what he's called in the last chapters of that book.
Interesting.
My
He's a MIT
Sounds like
guy.
a character from Dennis the Menace.
Well, definitely a character. But he's had some less than woke, or certainly even less than sensitive comments in the past few years that has made him fall out of favor with those who are, truly, politically on top of things, and whatever. But definitely someone who's a father of the open source world. Definitely, he started the GNU project, and all of that involves, or most of all that involves. And so, anyway, one of the biggest projects within GNU, of course, is the GNU C compiler. And, of course, the current iteration of GCC is definitely has intervening people who've probably contribute more to it than Stallman, but he certainly should be somebody who knows something about the C language. So, if you're interested in the C language programming, you may want to check out what Stallman has to say about it. So, very,
Awesome.
very cool.
Awesome. All right, next news article is from Linus Axon, titled C64 Theremin. Now, this is really cool. The first thing I thought of was the Big Bang Theory episode where Sheldon is playing this theremin. So what this is he has converted a Commodore 64 into a theremin. There's a video and article on it. You can see it. Seems pretty simple, the technology behind it.
Well, the technology is fairly simple. This is definitely in the category of, not a CoCo project, but it could be. So
For sure.
maybe it'll inspire some people to have their CoCo theremins. Be kind of neat. Get that weird, spooky music playing somewhere at a CoCo Fest or a Tandy Assembly,
Yeah, you could have a big theremin choir at the next CoCo Fest.
Yeah. Of course, if you're not familiar with the theremin sound, probably the most famous example, well, maybe the more famous example is probably some of the Good Vibrations from the Beach Boys. I think has a theremin in there. That
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
The Day the Earth Stood Still had a lot of theremin in it. The first big film.
and
with
Star
theremin
Trek
in it.
too, right?
Yeah.
The original Star Trek. That. Ooh. Anyway, so love to see your theremin project if you come up with one for the CoCo. So let us know.
Definitely.
So someone we hear from kind of regularly on the podcast, or at least in the new segments, is of course Mr. Alan Huffman, well known at CoCo Fest attendees. He used to do a lot of documenting of the trips to and from CoCo Fest and that sort of thing. Alan kind of spins up from time to time, produces a lot of output in a short period of time, and he's sort of been doing that in the past month or two. And so he, piles stuff onto his blog, and which is cool because that way we can consume it at our leisure. And so this is one of his writings. Is written an article called "Color Basic String Abuse." He's got parts 1 and 2. I'm not sure if there's anything beyond that. Anyway, this is sort of par for the course for Alan. He'll kind of pick something interesting or something about implementation of Color Basic, some feature of Color Basic, and in this case he'll dig into it. And in this case, it's the garbage collection of strings, which you don't really allocate strings for Color Basic. You just sort of assign them and then reassign that later when you don't need it anymore or whatever. And, as you do things to strings or modify them, add to them, whatever, the interpreter behind the scenes will manage memory and to make space for what you're doing. Sometimes that has some odd effects or things about how it behaves with regard to, how much free memory there is. That may not be obvious, and that's kind of what these articles are looking into. So if that kind of how does it work thing is interest to you about Color Basic, then here's something new from Alan. So go check it out. Nice to see that Alan spin up from time to time and give us some new information like that. So very cool. The next item from Chris Linderman. It's actually something on the Tandy 1000 group. Of course, like the CoCo, the Tandy 1000 was also a hardware platform that was famous for running DeskMate. And I'm sure it's not exactly the same. Obviously, different code base involved. But in this case, he says, well, this is fun. I just wrote my first DeskMate app. I did cheat and use sample code, but it's still pretty cool. Anyway, so clearly DeskMate had some libraries and some coding conventions and whatever associated with it. And, if that was true in DOS, I'm sure it was true for the CoCo version. I don't know if anyone has actually unlocked the keys to producing new DeskMate apps for the CoCo. As far as I know, not. But if you have, this would be a great time to pop forward and say, hey, this is how it works, and I'd love to see that. So it's happening in the Tandy 1000 world. I'd love to see it happen in the CoCo world. Somebody get off the docks and let us know how it works. It'd be pretty cool. The next one is a link to a YouTube video. The channel is called Wicked Makers. Halloween Witch Animatronic, a Terrifying Makeover. They picked up a Halloween prop, for your porch at a local thrift store, and they kind of fixed it up and made it look a little more, maybe more realistic and a little scarier. This is mostly a cosmetic, use a different paint and maybe a different set of clothes, that sort of stuff. But surely there's electronics involved. Again, this is not a CoCo project, but it could be. It'd be cool if you could take some of these and hack the electronics, add sensors or something. Hook them up to your CoCo and leave your CoCo out on the porch and use it to scare some Halloweeners. That'd be pretty cool. So if you have the Halloween projects, something like that, I'd a whole lot rather see some CoCo Halloween projects than another Septandy video, to be honest. But
yeah.
So anyway, something to think about. Maybe a better use of your time in September, in my opinion. The next one is a video from Chet Simpson. This is on Space Pirate Kumiko. You're gonna love my nuts. Just in time for Septandy. Anyway, so this is an update on his project called Space Pirate Kumiko. The new enemy, new graphics, a redesigned heads-up display with a score, plus new and updated scripts. But anyway, this is mostly a project update on his game. Some people appreciate his game, other people don't. That's fine if you don't. But anyway, here's the link. Check it out for yourself. And like you said, it's a pretty good code, whether or not you like the tone of it. But check it out. Thanks, Chet, for sharing. It's good to see some progress.
All right, we've got another one from Alan Huffman. It's CoCo ROM to RAM 64. It talks about the fact that the Microsoft Basic in the color computer only addresses 32K. So if you've got you can't see more than that from Basic. So if you want to do a test of 64K, this article discusses how you can do that and has some example code for it. And also discusses, taking the CoCo from ROM to RAM mode. Another good article by Alan. You'll want to check it out. Our next one is also by Alan Huffman, The Mystery of the Mem Size and Why CoCo 3 Basic Has One More Byte of It. I think we talked in earlier episodes about the fact that the mem size is actually off by 1 byte when you ask the memory size, which in most cases isn't a big deal for people, but just a little history in there to understand why that happens and how you could find that byte. And then it's a little different on the CoCo 3, so this article addresses that. Good detailed information about the CoCo, so check it out. Thanks, Alan. And our next two links are both from Mikey Furman for the Septandy vlog, number 1 and number 2. First one is Recovering My CoCo Desktop Publishing Project. This one's kind of fun. He found an old desktop publishing. I think this is code that he developed on his own for desktop publishing on the CoCo. But he found some code on a floppy, and he walks through doing some things to recover data from that disk, and then actually pulls up some examples of what it looked at like with some graphics and things on the screen. So that one's pretty cool. And then the second one is Why Mikey is Not a Game Programmer. And this is basically just a video showing some graphics and things that on the color computer, a little self-deprecating humor by Mikey, because these are pretty rudimentary, basic things, but fun to watch nonetheless. Thanks for that, Mikey.
All right, the next news item is CMOC 0.1.79 is out, floating point under Dragon DOS --add-os9-stack-space added by Mr. Pierre Sarazin. This is a post to the CoCo list. Pierre, who is the creator of CMOC, has added floating point support under Dragon DOS, which it obviously existed for Disk Basic, and the ability to specify additional stack space for the program. So nice little improvements there. The next news item is towards OS 9 operating system on P2 ? This is a post from someone who wants to, by Christoph Ebb is the poster here. Christoph looks like he wants to emulate OS 9 on a Propeller 2. Now, I don't know what a CPU Propeller 2 has, but obviously 6809 would have to be emulated. And I'm getting that vibe from reading the notes here on this post.
Yeah, that's a chip from Parallax, that made the basic stamp.
Okay.
This is kind of their next generation. It uses this language called Spin. It has multiple processors on it, and it do full parallel processing with it, with the Spin language. So this is kind of a cool project. I like it anyway.
I'm assuming it has a C compiler and all the tools to bring C code over to its native assembly language and so forth.
It does now. It didn't for a long time. The architecture is it's a bit different from the kind of the standard fare of a microcontroller or whatever. Anyway, there is a C compiler now, and there has been for years now, I'm sure. But since they mentioned OS 9 and the discussion of the color computer in there, I thought it might be entertaining for some people to read.
It demonstrates an awareness of OS 9 outside of the CoCo world, which is good.
Sure.
Kenton Electronics provides real interfaces for your color computer. Our SCSI interface is compatible with LR Tech, OWL-DOS, RGB DOS, HDOS, and OS 9, and features a 28-pin ROM socket. Just $89 or $119 with real-time clock. Add real RS-232 serial ports to your CoCo with the Kenton Dual COM board, featuring two 6551 ACIAs, two independent RS-232 channels, jumper selectable for up to 4 channels with a second board, and a 28-pin ROM socket. Ultra low power draw, and it's a great replacement for the Radio Shack RS-232 pack. Single port, just $74. Dual port, $89. All of Kenton's products are mil-spec quality and carry a 90-day warranty. Both the Dual COM board and SCSI interface work directly with a Y-cable or multi-pack interface, and Kenton products are all made right here in the USA. Kenton Electronics, Tonawanda, New York.
New for the Dragon 32. It's machine gun warfare in the sky. Your machine, the Royal Marine Spitfire. 8 guns, 16 1-second bursts. Your target, slow-moving Heinkel bombers, escorted by formidable Messerschmitt fighters. Ace High, Mark II. Test your mettle in the skies above London. Only £6.95. From Tudor Williams, Bilston, West Midlands.
Add the power of CPM to your color computer with Color Power 2. Just plug the Color Power 2 ROM pack into your 64K color computer 1 or 2. Connect your disk drive and composite monitor to the ROM pack. Insert our diskette and you now have access to thousands of CPM applications. Run WordStar, DBase 2, SuperCalc, Multiplan, and thousands of other popular CPM titles. Color Power 2 displays clear 80 by 24 text on your composite monitor with true upper and lower case. On board is a powerful 4 MHz Z80A microprocessor, and the Color Power 2 comes with its own power supply to keep your CoCo running cool. Color Power 2 with Digital Research CPM 2.2 is just $329. Absolutely no modifications to your color computer needed. The Color Power 2 from Color Power Unlimited Incorporated, New Providence, New Jersey.
The next news item is Vector Graphics Laser Projector by Bruce Land. This is a YouTube video of someone using an FPGA board to drive a laser projector, a vector graphics projector. John, this reminds me very much of the stuff you had from Steve. I can't remember his last name. Yes.
Moskowitz. Yep, and it's similar. Of course, that is driven just with a triple DAC board, a kind of a home-built triple DAC board that I built from Steve's design. But, it's a similar idea. You can draw with a laser on the screen or whatever. And you get some of the same, they go a little fast and you get some kind of curves instead of sharp points or whatever. And a few lines that maybe are a little too squiggly, but anyway, sort of the similar thing and something that can be done with a CoCo.
No doubt. The next news item is Septandy 2022, Tandy CoCo 1 RF to composite and audio mods with TinyComp for less than $20 by Rudy's Retro Intel at YouTube. This is a YouTube video. I must confess, I'm not exactly sure if he's adding a piece of hardware to give the CoCo 1 composite from RF or if he's just hacking the board without any additional hardware. It seems that he's adding something called a TinyComp. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think it's some kind of pre-manufactured board that's available. It says the TinyComp is a fabulous, very handy composite video solution for anyone into the restoration of or just fooling around with retro computers. So it's universal and can be made to work with any system that has an RF CAN.
Interesting. So it looks like he has the CoCo 1 open. This thing doesn't somehow interface to the F connector. It looks like he's putting it directly in. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe he's just trying to probe it or something. But another solution for getting composite video and audio from RF. Boy, I wish we had these things as plentiful back in the day as we do now.
No kidding.
That's for sure.
The next news item is Bringing Back My Childhood Programs for the TRS-80 Color Computer from memory by Paulo Garcia from Vintage is the New Old. This is a nice little blog post from Paulo. He's doing some drawing of text in P-Mode 3. Man, I don't even I used to use a lot of this, right? P mode and remember what the different P modes and screen commands were. I forgot all of that. But looking at this code sure brings back memories. You know, you do the P mode and the screen and the PCLS. Good stuff. Good commands there. I see that he's using the draw command. It's been a long time since I used that. My goodness. Talk about bring back memories. This code certainly does that.
Yeah, well, it's always good to see people drag out the manuals and write some code to just goof around with the CoCo. It's good to see them get some use.
That's right.
Good for your brain cells, too.
The next news item is another September video, Vlog 3, Dev Update Driver for the CoCo Iowan Ethernet card by Mikey Furman. I must confess I have not been following this as closely as I should. I do have one of those Ethernet cards I picked up at CoCo Fest this year, but it appears that Mike is making progress in his 6009 adaptation of the socket code required to get the CoCo Iowan going. I don't see any evidence other than just screenshots of code, but I'm presuming it's either working or close to working.
Yeah, I think that's what the demo shows. He can, access a DriveWire server over Ethernet, which may help if you have wiring length problems or whatever. Some people have complained about, they can't put their DriveWire server far enough away with a serial connection. But with the Ethernet, it should be no problem, or reasonably no problem. We'll see. There's always somebody who'll have a problem you didn't think of, I guess. But
yeah, it's good to see that project going forward. The next news item is again Mike Furman. This is another September vlog, entry vlog 4, making a new newsletter. So this is, I guess, a continuation of his earlier vlog where he talked about recovering his CoCo desktop publishing project. Looks like he's actually going through the code, or I guess discussing the layout of the newsletter, and demonstrates. Actually, it's pretty impressive. My goodness, this is some good stuff. As I scroll through the YouTube video, very nice. The next news item is, I am pleased to announce a new CoCo 1, 2, or 3 game, just when you thought it was safe to go back to sleep, Robot Nightmare by Ken Rygaard. This is a TRS-80 Color Computer Facebook post from Ken. A game that looks like a maze game. I see some different elements in the YouTube video that the video that he's posted there, not a YouTube video. And it looks like there's a little character running around the screen, and the maze is shooting some things maybe, and there are different, I guess, robots. There's a snake and some other characters there. And it looks like it's in CoCo 1, 2, and 3, so it's using the semi-graphics mode, I guess, but it doesn't look half bad, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a competent game. I haven't tried it, but some people seem to be enjoying it. So thank you, Ken, for sharing.
All right. Next news article up is from Jim Gary. It's titled The Original Oregon Trail Game. So I just learned something new myself. I had no idea the original was written for HP Timeshared Basic. So Jim Gary has ported this to the MC10. That's awesome.
Huh. Pretty cool.
I seriously had no clue. I thought that was a 80s game, not 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shows, I think it shows 1971 here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going back.
When people were calling in or dialing up, the time sharing systems to write BASIC long before most of us even thought about having a computer at home, or anyone thought about having a BBS.
Yeah. That's right. We were probably learning how to walk when that was happening.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so now you can experience the original game on your MC10. Great work, Jim.
Nice.
All right, next news article is a Septandy video on YouTube from Dan Hoover. Tandy joystick teardown and repair. So in this video, it tears down. It's the Tandy Deluxe joystick, by the way. So it's Very useful video. And also handy if you're going to buy John's Autofire circuit. So you can learn the internals of the joystick before you start messing around with it.
Yeah. Yeah, figure out where to mount stuff.
Yeah. That's cool. Cool little video. All right, next news article is another Septandy video on YouTube from Professor Chet Simpson. Space Pirate Kumiko full test stage gameplay. This is really cool. It's really coming along here. He's added some extra bosses, enemies, more graphics. I mean, this game really does look 16-bit. You have to say. He's pushing. It
looks great. Definitely a great programming feat.
Yeah. You know, if you were to blindfold somebody, tell them, what computer this is running on, I mean, I don't know if they'd guess the CoCo 3.
Yeah, so I don't think they would.
That's pretty good. Great work, Chet. Looking forward to the final release. I'll definitely be giving that a review. And it also helps that it's one of my favorite genres, too. I like the 2D shoot-'em-up games.
The bullet hell?
Yes. All right, last news article is yet again another Septandy video on YouTube from Ken Waters. My new CoCo 3 has some intermittent problems. So Ken does a video. He picked up a CoCo 3. It didn't work, and then it started working, but it had issues. So he goes right through it. It's a pretty in-depth video here. We learn a little bit more about the CoCo 3. Great work, Ken.
Well, all right. I guess that brings us to the end of our news. So we'll take another little break, and we'll be back with some of your feedback.
Since 1994, Cloud9 has been making cool stuff for your color computer, like the Cloud9 Mini Flash, a flash cartridge for your color computer or Dragon. The Mini Flash gives you a total of 4 16K banks of flash memory. You can easily flash ROM images into any of the 4 16K banks. Store your favorite DOS ROMs and game packs on the Mini Flash. And the Mini Flash is perfect for prototyping your own ROMs without the need for an EEPROM burner. The Mini Flash comes with flash programming software and test utilities. It's preloaded with HDB-DOS for DriveWire and 2 games from Retro Tinker, Coco Dooku and Follow Coco, so you can use the Mini Flash immediately. The Cloud9 Mini Flash works on all color computer and Dragon models and is housed in a high-quality injection molded cartridge case. The Mini Flash, only from Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
This month in CoCo history. Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we go back 39 years to the September 1983 issue of Hot Cocoa and an advertisement for distinct keyboard upgrades. On page 17 of that issue is an ad from HJL Products for its professional keyboard for the TRS-80 color computer. The HJL 57 replaced the Chiclet keyboard of the CoCo 1, the F-board version of the CoCo 1, and the TDP 100, giving the user raised keys with full travel. The keyboard even featured additional function keys F1 through F4. Manufactured in the United States, the HJL 57 touted contacts rated for a minimum of 100 million cycles, rigid aluminum baseplate, and a spill-proof housing. And it met FCC Article 15 requirements on October 1st, 1983. All of that, with a 1-year warranty, came to $79.95. Today, the legacy HJL 57 can be found occasionally for sale, installed on a CoCo, and remains highly sought by collectors. And that's This Month in CoCo History.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time to hear some feedback. In this case, we've got a couple of items that are both cherry-picked from some interactions we had on the CoCo Crew Podcast Facebook page. I think the gist of this one was, this is episode 88, but not too long from now, which could be a year from now, we should be coming up on episode 100. Just kind of feeling people out to say, for our 100th episode, is there something we should be working towards or planning, some kind of big event or whatever? And, I figured it's maybe a little early now, but better than waiting till episode 98 to ask, just in case it's something that needs more than a month or two of planning. We got this one reply from Paulo Garcia. He said, as suggested, maybe a retrospective of what happened to you related to the CoCo during all this time. So that's a pretty good suggestion. But, what else? Are there any other suggestions, any other thoughts? When we get to episode 100, that's be quite the milestone. So that'll be beyond 8 years. I don't know what the answer is, but if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to let us know. Maybe you can get your thoughts in our feedback. So anyway, thank you, Paulo, for your input. And the next one was a reply to another post I made. It was basically a repost of the video graphic for the Tandy Assembly. I said something to the effect of making Tandy Assembly 2022 happen. And you got a few replies. And one of them was from Sean Kelly. He said, "Go CoCo Crew," with a smiley face. So very enthusiastic. I like that. So thank you, Sean. It's good to hear from you. So that's your feedback, all positive this time around. If you have some feedback for us, whether it's positive or negative, or respectful or disrespectful, or whatever you got, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us an email at feedback feedback@cococrew.org, and you'll probably get listed on the air. So very exciting stuff. Anyway, that's all we've got for feedback this month. So why don't we take another little break? We'll be back with the rest of the show, or with maybe a host discussion.
Unlock the real power of your CoCo with great deals from Danasoft. Like Big Basic, it allows you to create programs up to 470K, just $39.95 US, $46.50 Canadian. Or Big RAM Disk, get the speed of working with programs and data in memory. You can format, copy, backup, just like a real disk drive. Just $12.95 US, $14.95 Canadian. See our ad in Rainbow Magazine. When you think CoCo, think great deals from Danasoft. We're located in sunny Mississauga.
Howard Medical Computers. Save $100 on Magnavox monitors. Magnavox CM8505 RGB analog, only $198. Zenith 123A 12-inch green screen, just $67.50. Zenith 122A 12-inch amber screen, just $88. Stop by our showroom for other special deals on controllers, memory, disk drive, software, and more. Open 6 to 5 Monday through Friday, 10 to 3 Saturdays. Located at 1690 North Elston in Chicago, Illinois. Howard Medical Computers.
All right, welcome back, CoCo Cruisers. Now it's time for this month's host discussion. We're going to get a little philosophical, perhaps, on this one, or maybe in a way it gets us back to one of the core ongoing conflicts within the CoCo community. So the topic here is OS 9, which of course OS 9 was long ago kind of picked and introduced to us as the replacement operating system for the CoCo as an alternative to Disk Basic. But, the big difference there is, whereas Disk Basic is essentially a language with just enough extra stuff to make the machine run, OS 9 is, a real operating system with the real capabilities, real multitasking, uses real device drivers and other kind of more modern concepts. OS 9 is the real deal. And you can see that, it's continued through the Nitrous 9 project, which is still being developed to this day. So definitely it's something that some people are very excited about and spend a lot of time with. Going all the way back to the good old days of the CoCo, there was kind of a divide between the Disk Basic users and who maybe just didn't have much use for OS 9 or didn't take a lot of interest in OS 9, and the people who were maybe a little more visionary, who saw OS 9 for being a good technology and certainly sort of more future-proof, kind of advocated for OS 9, and those people kind of eventually inspired some of the CoCo 4 efforts that gave us like the MM1 or the TC70 and some of the other kind of CoCo alternative machines, and which, maybe a little chuckle-worthy nowadays, but in effect, those efforts in those days kind of trying to keep the CoCo relevant after being abandoned by Tandy may have actually led to keeping this as a viable hobby for decades. So anyway, so my topic, the way I phrased it, OS 9, was it too much too soon, or was it too little too late? And so that's kind of what I'm getting at. With the too much too soon, was it just too good? Was it overwhelming, for us kind of dumb old kids or whatever, that we just wanted to play with a computer and load up our Winnie the Pooh game or whatever? Was OS 9 overkill for what we were doing? Or either way, it did show up, and it was available and even had a graphical environment, and there were some apps available for it, and there were certainly other apps from other computers that ran OS 9 that could be made to run on the CoCo. And yet I don't think there was a lot of that happening. So was OS 9 kind of too little too late to kind of keep the CoCo relevant back in the day? I don't know. And like you said, it's sort of been the major fault line for the CoCo community for 30 years or 40 years. I don't know. It's probably worth some discussion. I mean, hopefully I've expressed that OS 9 is an admirable technology from the past. It kind of was one of the things early on in the CoCo hobby that attracted me as a newly minted computer engineering graduate to justify my interest in this old computer. Is that, well, there's this cool operating system that did all this neat stuff, and it really was a cool technology, but it didn't save us. So I don't know which one. Where do you think it is? Neil, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I do. I'm going to go with it. Save the CoCo. This is just my thoughts on it, though, because it did spawn another group of people. I mean, that divide you're talking about is real. I mean, I witnessed that, even as a child at 10 years old, getting my first CoCo 3, joining user groups, and I noticed that divide even at a young age, and I always thought that was kind of strange. But, learning OS 9 back then, my first dealings with it was a game called Rogue. You had to type DOS, and I kept seeing this OS 9 boot. So it got me intrigued. I'm like, what is this? I knew it just didn't look the same, right? So that's when I actually bought a copy of OS 9 Level 2 from my local Radio Shack, and then I just, eventually got through it and learned it. So I think it really did help the CoCo. That's just my thoughts because of the, the extra group of people. And the stuff they were doing with it was just phenomenal. The multitasking and the terminal windows and all of that stuff.
Well, like I said, it definitely was an advanced technology for its day. Maybe too advanced. Like you say, that along with the people that you were alluding to that brought it into the community, there were some people who were kind of already in the community that maybe were a little bit left behind by OS 9. I don't know if that was, if there were negative effects from that beyond just the fact that it happened or not. I don't know. I'll bet Boise has an opinion.
Oh, yeah. I've got plenty of thoughts on this. I don't necessarily think it was too much too soon or too little too late, but if I had to pick one, if you said you got to pick one, I would say it was probably the former. Let's not forget that we talk about OS 9 versus RS-DOS, but if you go all the way back to when OS 9 was introduced for the CoCo, before that, there were other competitors in the space for operating system king on the CoCo, the big one being Flex. So we could easily have been talking about the Flex operating system, although I think OS 9 had much more interesting features architecturally than Flex did. So if I think of OS 9 back then as being too much too soon, it was a little bit like because it was so advanced and had so much power, I think it was probably a lot for people to take in. Have you ever seen the video of, for foie gras, which is, stuffing, forcing food down a goose's neck? It's kind of what OS 9 was, I think, to a lot of people. It was so much, so good, so advanced, but it was so much to take in that I think a lot of people just gave up by the wayside on it. And obviously, a lot of people didn't. A lot of people stuck with it. Now, as Neil pointed out, it did, I think, carry the CoCo at a time when the CoCo was not being produced anymore, and its popularity as a modern machine waned, just giving way to the thrust of MS-DOS and more modern computers. And even today, OS 9 is still a big part of the CoCo. And it's still obviously an impressive operating system, and it was, of course, much larger than just the CoCo in its own industrial and scientific circles where it was used. But yeah, it was an interesting choice for a small 8/16-bit computer, but I think it really showed people what the CoCo and the 6809 could do, and in that sense, it was a champion for the system. But it was a lot in the beginning, and like I said, we could be talking about Flex right now, but we're not.
Yeah, well, like I say, you mentioned Flex. That might have been sort of a OS 9 may have been the beta VCR, whereas Flex may have been the VHS of the day. Whereas not quite as good, but maybe was in some ways a better fit for the market. Yeah. I say that because what I know about Flex, with when people start talking about OS 9 for the CoCo, they always say that OS 9 was a Unix-like operating system. Yeah. Which, as someone who is sort of a Unix person, I always kind of grit my teeth when that comes along. I think calling OS 9 Unix-like is not untrue, but it's taking a little bit of license, I think, with that. What does Unix-like mean? But if you're going to do a similar comparison for Flex, Flex is a DOS-like operating system. And looking at what the other systems were running in that time period, there were, of course, the IBM PCs and compatibles were running DOS. The machines that weren't running DOS, many of them were running CP/M, which is a similar type of system. And so in some ways, I think Flex was sort of a better fit for the people in the marketplace at that time. I'm not really sure. Well, I'm sure we could debate or uncover some of the details of why Flex was not pushed by Tandy. I wonder what the difference would have been if they had been pushing Flex. Would that have somehow been a little more comfortable for the average RS-DOS guy to flip over to, and would have still had some of the same benefits of being able to pick up software packages that already existed for other computers.
The other thing about Flex that's interesting is that I don't think Flex went on to run on the 68,000 like OS 9 did.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It was strictly 6809, and I don't really recall if it was Flex Systems or some company that had it, but they weren't they didn't have the ambitions of Microware.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure there's some various personality things involved there too. Some other realities. Anyway, well, we kind of beat this around a little bit. How about Mike? I don't think we've heard from you on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question OS 9 is an impressive operating system, and you see it all the time when people discover it. They're like, "Wow, this existed back then. I never knew this." So it is an impressive feat. I would say one of the things that hurt it was too much, meaning it was too expensive for a lot of people at the time. When it entered the market, even as capable as it was, people, and certainly, a lot of the CoCo community were gamers with some programming, machine or basic, and this would be kind of a shock for that world to just come to, a more sophisticated development environment and multitasking, and it did attract people that wouldn't have been attracted without that operating system, because it was I know you don't like the term Unix-like, but it borrowed a lot of that philosophy. I always described it to people as Unix without virtual memory.
Yeah.
And, it didn't have virtual memory, but it had most of the other Unix-like. So it kind of had a Unix philosophy, even though if it wasn't architecturally even close to written the same way or anything. But it was definitely a huge leap forward. And I think I got into OS 9, well, because I was into Unix, working with Unix systems. So I jumped on pretty early on. But I think a lot of people didn't get in until the tail end of when they started marking OS 9 down to be, $50. People could afford to jump into it and see what it was about. Or like a lot of us did, we got one of the games and figure out how to hack in, get into OS 9 and bypass Corona's Rift or whatever. You could actually make your own assist disk and everything from that if you broke into it. And if they had continued the color computer, or if they'd actually developed a CoCo 4, I think OS 9 probably would have had a life or had a little more backing to it. But I think that was just it. It was kind of the end of the road. Tandy wasn't going to make any money by prolonging, even going into the 68,000 realm if they wanted to. The writing was just kind of on the wall. And, Flex is more like CPM, I think, even than DOS. And CPM was kind of on its way out as well.
That's true.
There was a large install base, and a lot of CPM code had been ported over to Flex or whatever. So there definitely were more applications available for Flex than there were for OS 9 at the time. Maybe it was too much too late.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And in terms of too late, I mean, it's pretty old. Yeah, it showed up fairly early, really. Not day one, but it still was back in. When did it show up in the catalog? 81, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably something else we just should talk about. I think it was level 2 that really made it take off. The level 1.
OS 9 for the CoCo was released in fall of '83.
Oh, okay. Well, that's at least CoCo 2 time, so yeah.
I don't think they really advertised for it too heavily either.
No, it wasn't until probably 86. In fact, the last month's this month in CoCo history, or month before, talked about that. Tandy put out a few magazine advertisements for OS 9 software, specifically bearing OS 9 on the ad. But it was, if you recall, in 1983, in the fall of '83, the CoCo 2 was released, I believe. And along with that, I was the white 64K CoCo 1. And of course, since OS 9 required 64K to run, that was why it came out at the same time as that.
So maybe that's the thing. It's just the technology of the operating system there was good stuff, but it was kind of chasing the hardware that could run it. And
right, exactly.
So if time was just a little different, or
I would also add that the operating system itself took up a lot of the RAM, right, in order to run. So you were starting, OS 9 was sort of starting from behind already, because in order for it to run, it had to use quite a bit of the 64K memory space. So you were already limiting yourself in terms of the amount of RAM you had to run additional software. So as an aspirational product, it was awesome because of the features it had. It was just, and of course, OS 9, you did have the ability to take out things that you weren't using at the time in the boot file, like pipes or other modules to bring that RAM footprint down. But you needed a certain minimum amount, like your disk drivers and all that, just to get things up and running. So.
Right, and just to draw another connection to the other systems of the era, that you could do that kind of stuff, but I'm sure that's all as fondly remembered as those of us with the DOS background fondly remember, adjusting our config.sys files. A lot of twiddling that wasn't all that popular for people to do.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that goes back to my comment about level 2. Like you said, it's because level 2 would run on, you had more memory on a 512K CoCo than you really were kind of bound on the CoCo 1 and 2 as far as the memory constraints.
And what's interesting about level 2 for the CoCo 3 when it came out, if you try, and you could boot level 2 on a CoCo 3 with 128K, but you ended up, I think, with like 8 or 16K left.
Right.
So again, you were sort of starting behind the 8 ball. If you didn't have enough RAM, already just selling the stock CoCo 3, OS 9 level 2 really needed more than that just to make itself useful. But you're right. If it had the RAM, it was really powerful, and you could exercise it quite nicely.
Well, is that all we should say? Does that resolve it?
Well, there's a lot more that could be said, but I think we've touched on the salient points.
Yeah. Too much, too late, I guess, is the term, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I guess that'll settle it, and that'll we'll call this to a close, and we'll take another break, and then we'll be back with whatever's left in the show.
Time to learn with CoCo House Rock.
I know that a computer has memory and disks and a microprocessor, but how does data get between all of these different things?
It's called the data bus. It's like a highway that connects all of the places data needs to go inside the computer.
Like a school bus?
Actually, it's pretty similar.
Come along and ride the data bus, taking data anywhere it needs to go. The data highway has a line for every bit, running parallel lanes all in a row. Data moves down the highway between RAM and ROM and peripherals and the CPU. When they each take turns, data gets through.
What keeps everything from talking at the same time?
No need to worry on the data bus. Control lines regulate and keep the data sound. Through decoding, every place has an address, and the destination always can be found. Data moves down the highway between RAM and ROM and peripherals and the CPU. When they each take turns, data gets through.
Okay, so data is on the data bus, but how does it know where to go?
That's controlled by another bus called the address bus. Every device has its own unique address. The address determines where you read data from or write data to.
So every device is connected to the data bus and the address bus?
Yes, and the microprocessor, or CPU, controls whether a device is reading or writing on the data bus.
So the CPU prevents devices from all sending data at the same time?
Yes, in fact, the devices can't write to the data bus unless the CPU allows it.
It's just like sending a letter. You specify an address and the data goes to that address.
That's a great analogy.
Data goes riding along the bus. Data moves down the highway between RAM and ROM and peripherals and the CPU. When they each take turns, data gets through. CoCo Crew. Everybody CoCo, 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 everybody CoCo. Data goes riding along the bus. Everybody CoCo, everybody CoCo, everybody CoCo, everybody
Hi, my name is Felix Martin. I am the Senior Lab Coordinator for Crushco, located right here in Mississauga, Ontario, where we perform certified product testing. I recently received a request from Boise Pete to perform Nitrous 9 crash testing on the Tandy Color Computer 3, so I invited Boise to join us to review the results. We immediately set about performing two different tests. First, drop testing from a height of 74 centimeters. Then a more rigorous impact test at 56 kilometers per hour. I have to say, the results weren't great. While the drop tests often resulted in cracked plastic and sometimes cracks in the motherboard, The impact tests were simply devastating.
Felix, when I said crash testing, I meant software crash testing. I wanted to see if any of the updates caused software crashes, not physical crash tests.
Oh. In that case, never mind.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 88 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Well, this month, I don't have any game, utility, or hardware to review. Reason why, you ask? I recently found out a week ago, Canadian travel mandates have been lifted. What does this mean, and why no review, you ask? Well, I'll be attending Tandy Assembly, so I've been spending my time preparing for the event, getting t-shirts, hoodies, and the sponsor poster made on time. Everything is completed by the wire. I'm so excited you have no idea. If you could see me right now, I am smiling from ear to ear. It will be so great to see all of you again and catching up. 3 years is far too long between Tandy Assembly fests. Wow, this doesn't even seem real, that in one more day I'll be hitting the road and making my way to Springfield, Ohio. Feels like Christmas. If you are hearing this and you're on the fence about coming, I hope you can make it. Would sure be great to see all of you in person again. Come join us at Tandy Assembly on September 30th to October 2nd in Springfield, Ohio. For more details, visit our website at www.tandyassembly.com. Next month I'll definitely make it up to you, and I'll be back with a fun review. Who knows, perhaps it'll be something I might pick up at Tandy Assembly. Well, until next month, happy Retro Tandy Festing, and CoCo forever.
If you use your color computer for spreadsheets, accounting, and other numeric-intensive applications, then you need the Numberjack from HJL Products. The Numberjack is a numeric keypad that connects to your color computer in just 5 minutes. No soldering, no drilling, and no special tools required. In addition to the 10 number keys, the Numberjack features 4 cursor keys, clear, decimal point, and 4 standard math keys. The Numberjack has a low-profile ABS enclosure with the same full travel key switches used in the HJL 57 keyboard. The Numberjack is built so well it carries a full 1-year warranty. Cut the tedium out of numeric data work with the Numberjack from HJL Products, a division of Touchstone Technologies.
Well, it's that time again. We have reached the end of the podcast. This concludes episode 88. As usual, I'd like to thank our host John Linville for procuring all the news articles and providing us with informative tech segments. Mike Rowan, who painstakingly edits the podcast and creates those fun commercials. Boise Pete, our CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Last but not least, all of you who listen and support us each month. We also really do appreciate hearing from you and getting your feedback. Well, until next month, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance. Dance, dance, dance. CoCo. CoCo.